All right, hello and welcome everybody. My name is Ben Munson with FarmQA. I'm an account executive and I'm excited to walk you through the nutrient blender functionality we've been working on. So another big feature that FarmQA is adding to our software platform. And with that, it's focused around fertility products, and with that, calculating out blends, blend totals, blend reporting. And so with that, that will be the focus for today. This is recorded, so you can go back and watch this if you want to follow along with your own login to FarmQA, either through a free trial or an existing customer. But this functionality is fully released, and it is part of our crop planning add-on feature. So with that, excited to show you all the functionality. Housekeeping items, we do take questions. So in the Microsoft Teams chat, you can be entering in any questions that come up along the way. And we do have a FarmQA team member monitoring that. So they will jump in and interject with those questions in a timely fashion. So please do that. Would love for this to be interactive. But with that said, we will jump right in. So first of all, actually more housekeeping, we're going to talk through upcoming webinars. So with this, we've been trying to ramp up our webinars into the fall and winter time. And so last week was covering our formula-based prescription writing functionality, which is now out and available to watch. September 2nd coming up, that's going to cover more of the general functionality around soil sampling. And so if you, as part of today, you'll see some places in the interface where the soil data gets utilized. That webinar is going to cover how do you collect it, how do you get it into the software. Additionally, October 14th, diving more into a high-level variable rate, how do you generate zones, prescriptions in FarmQA. Planning, November 11th, jump into that, and then December 9th, what's new. So with that, a lot of new functionality coming through with FarmQA, and so with that, please stay tuned to these webinars to stay up with the latest and greatest functionality that we have coming up. So what is blending in our eyes? So what we're allow you to do as an agronomist, either that's as an independent with a co-op with retailers or at a farm level, you can input yield goals at a field level. We allow you to input what we call agronomic coefficients at a crop level to help you calculate the field needs. From there, we can subtract out things like your soil test results to come up with the final nutrient need for the upcoming season. With that, we then let you set up or select products and help you maximize or efficiently meet the needed rates or needs of the fields. And then with that, we can report out on those blends, get you product totals, pricing if you want that. And so that is the specifics of today. But as per usual, we're going to jump in and share my screen and walk you through some real live scenarios here. Excuse me. And as mentioned, chat is live, so please jump into that chat and provide feedback. And I'm going to fire up my screen share again. Okay. So we are now in FarmQA. We call this FarmQA controller, meaning that it's our web portal to our software. And this is where the blending functionality happens. So it's all web-based. That does mean you can access it from any device. It's not like it's specific to a particular computer or a device itself. With this, I'm going to start by walking through the basics. If you're an existing FarmQA customer, some of this might be review as far as adding new products and setting them up. But I want this to be an all-encompassing webinar to make sure that you can watch this start to finish and do everything you need to do to accomplish creating blends. So with that being said, in my particular account, I've got fields defined, I've got clients defined within my account. And with that, when it comes to blends, we're going to allow you to select fields to contribute to a blend. And so that's part of this. It's not actually required. So as we get into it, you can see you can bypass and just type in a number of acres and a crop. But you'll notice I will incorporate and multi-select some of these fields later on in the blend process. But a bigger part of the setup is on the product side. And so for that, I'm going to click on this advice tab on the left-hand side of my screen. Within here, the two main tabs to draw attention to here would be the products and the mixes tab. And so these think of these as building blocks to working our way into a nutrient blend. So with that, I would call out that we can help to bulk upload your product list. If you're new to FarmQA, you want to even try this out, we can get you to a state where all your products are bulk uploaded. But for the time being, I'm going to show just the manual process. If you want to just add one on the fly, you'll follow the steps going forward. Additionally, we do have some common list of products that we can populate into your accounts. If you reach out and just say, Ben, give us the standard list, we can give you that as well. So at a high level, products, those are individual products. So like urea, MAP, DAP. Mixes, this is a scenario. So mixes in our particular case with blends is going to let us group products together to say, I commonly apply in the fall these 3 or 4 products. So save that out as a mix. And with that term mix, it's simply just a grouping of products that we can quickly refer to and pull through into a blend as a starting point. So at a high level, that's the difference. To add a product, so we're going to come through here, we're going to add a product. In the case of fertilizers, they're not typically defined to the EPA, so we go through the new product option here, and that's essentially blank slate. We're going to give you all blank input boxes, and you can define the product from scratch. And so in this case, let's just say we're going to define, I've already got urea, so I'm going to say urea 2, or actually you go webinar. With that, you can choose a type. So urea, you can see we've got dry fertilizers, dry manures, liquid fertilizers, and liquid manures. And so we specify those, but in choosing any fertilizer product, we now change this right-hand side to ask you for details about nutrient values, bulk density, etc. And so in this case, we'll set up, we'll create urea. Let's say default rate is 100 pounds an acre, and the price is $500 per ton. So with this, that would be how you could set up a product. But a key thing here is we do want to know these attributes. So let's say that's 100 pounds in here for the density. And then with the NPK breakdown, we've got the ability to type in that's a 4600 for analysis value. And so we can save that out. And now we have urea as a product that can be used throughout the process of blends, mixes, crop plans, etc. So that quick overview, we do have a full webinar working through just the general advice recommendation functionality. So reach out if you need more detail on that. Another quick addition here is let's just add a liquid product. One addition with the liquid products is we do now ask you for the weight to allow us to convert. If you're using a liquid product, we can still work that back into pounds, tons, and give you totals across fields that might have both dry and liquid products. So with that, say 11 pounds per gallon, and that's 2800. With this too, I'll call out, you can add micros. So within that, any sort of micro you want to add, so zinc, sulfur, pretty common with that. And you could key in a value for sulfur, and that flows all the way through the product as well. So as you do that, you can see you're in the black box below the product. We now track the breakdown of those products. So with that, that is the setup, and we can now talk through a little more detail on the mix side. So what I'll be doing here from a mix standpoint is thinking about it of saying in the spring, I typically have a set of products that I recommend and I use when setting up my plans or my blends, and then in fall, maybe a different set. And so with this, we can set up and say, this is my, say, soybean, fall, for. With this, we can then say instructions. You could say this is, let's say, after corn into soybeans. You can set application period. So I'm calling this fall, so we'll say post-harvest. Associate this to a crop. So in this case, we want to associate this to soybeans or beans. So with this, we'll select that. This is a multi-select. So if you have, that also applies to navy beans, I can multi-select. But then within here, I can now define and say, okay, typically I'll put down anhydrous, I've got map, and I'm just searching up here in the top for my products. I've got potash, and then I've got some zinc sulfate, and I add those. So at this point, the mix here, I've got some default rates. So you can set that to say I typically do like to set some default rates as a starting point for a blend, or you can clear this out and say I want to kind of have a clean slate in how I start my blends. And so we'll set that in that way here. I'm going to call this webinar. So with that, we'll save it. And this is, again, this will come into play when I start to actually create a blend and use these product sets. But that is a useful tool you'll see coming up. We can also duplicate this. So if you want to quickly duplicate and create another one called canola Falford, and say in canola, I never apply zinc, and instead of MAP, I use DAP. And so that's a way you can manipulate those mixes to have a set of products that are going to come into play when we do blending and even in crop planning. So with that, the kind of the options are limitless there as far as what you want to set up as kind of pre-canned sets of products to use. Now I want to get into the actual blending functionality. So a couple things that we've added in. First being the most prominent being the nutrient blender. And so we're back in advice. You can see we just set up products and mixes, and now it's time to do nutrient blending. So that's called out as a separate tab. Again, this is linked to our crop planning add-on feature. And so if you have our base package, you wouldn't see this, but can add on the crop planner. So getting into nutrient blending. So at this point, we've got fields created. We have soil results on those fields, so it's run through a lab. Those results have been brought back into FarmQA. And then in addition to that, we've got products set up, and then this optional concept of a mix, which I'll show as well. So all those is kind of building blocks to get us to this stage. And then at this point, we can create a new blend. And so what this is doing, we do respect your organizational selection. So if you want to create a blend for, let's just say, my North Dakota farms, I can then, and actually as I filter through this would show me blends for a particular client. And so with that, if you want to say, show me all the blends across my entire account, click at that top level versus drilling into a client or a region of your operation. So with this, I can hit the plus button to say create new blend. So with this, we start you out on a new screen that's calling for a blend name. So we're going to call this webinar corn blend. And with notes, let's just say this is for all corn fields for ND farms to be applied in the fall of 2025. So with that, notes is optional, name is required. We now have the next step in the process is to choose fields or to set an area. So ultimately, the bare bones requirement is we do need some sort of area input into factoring all of our calculations. And so you can do that through a field selector. So we'll start with that. And so with this, I've got my set of corn fields. I can do a select all. I can also then start subtracting from this certain fields if I don't want to, for whatever reason, don't want to include those. Maybe they're different, different in how they get treated or different billing for some reason. So with that, I selected a set of fields and I update. So now those fields are associated to this blend. And first thing that does is we calculate the area across those fields. And so we're pulling through the area as part of the process and the reporting that we're going to do. Now we can set nutrient goals. So this is a major component here as well. And so jumping into the nutrient goals, I now have my nutrient coefficients. And with that, actually, I should have called that out as a building block. So real quick, we'll take a left turn into the coefficients. So with that, I'll come back to my blends. I meant to call this out. So we've got products set up, we got mixes, but one thing that's going to come into play too is the nutrients per yield unit can be set up at a crop level. So for example, I'm going to be using corn throughout my demo. So I've said that for corn, I believe I need one, say, pound of nitrogen for every bushel of corn I want to produce. And with that, agronomically, whatever you believe in, you can type those values here, and we're going to push that coefficient through. So very much user defined, and you can use that as it's going to basically be yield goal times your coefficient, and then start working backwards with your lab results. So in that, I set up a nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium coefficient. If I want to, if you have some sort of sulfur coefficient as well, you could add that in, and that would be factored in through the process as well. So I'm not going to do sulfur at this point. So with that, I did mean to call that out. So that's, again, settings tab, crops varieties, and then you can edit the nutrient per yield unit at the crop level. Okay, jumping back into where I was. So I had a blend. I created a blend. We called this then webinar corn. I selected a set of fields. In this case, I just select all. There's a couple I don't want to include in this blend intentionally here. So with that, I'm now back to the place where I was before. So I click on the nutrient goals. You can see that since these are all corn crops, we were able to select that. If you select fields of multiple crops, we'll just say we don't know what crop you're blending for, so set a crop here. Nutrient coefficients, you can add nutrients as well. So what I'll do at this point, actually, I will just leave this without, say, sulfur and zinc, but I'm going to add those in later, just so you can see how that functions. So what I can do is I can say, for corn, in general, I want to produce 200 bushels in acre corn. So I can set that at the very top level, high level, saying that's what I'm trying to achieve. But now, so we know yield goals are at a field level. So within this view, I can now say, well, field 240, I think that can yield 225. Field 32, that can yield 190, so on and so forth. So those adjustments will be made at a field level. And so as I do that, what's happening here? So this is field 240. We know it's 236 acres. We inputted a yield goal. As part of this, what it's telling us is that our calculated goal that we're trying to achieve is 225 bushels. And so with that, as I mentioned, that's the coefficient that we had set. So 1 pound of nitrogen gets me to 1 bushel of corn. So it's taking 1 times 225, getting me to 225. And then with that, you can always override to say, I want to put in, even though it says that, I'm going to go to 300 or 310. So that's the math that's happening. But we can also start to subtract. And so you may want to subtract what's in the soil. So with that, we reference your soil data. I've got really old data in some of these fields. But as I pull those through, it's now telling me in that sample set, you didn't have any nitrogen. And so your yield goal remains at 225. In the case of phosphorus, you had your coefficient times the yield goal is getting you to 112 pounds. Now, in your soil, you had 63. So you still need to apply 50 pounds this year to achieve your yield goal of 225. Then for potassium, great example here, saying we need to achieve 270 pounds, but you've got plenty. There's 353 in the soil from that test result. So you don't need to add any. So with that, that's the concept here of coming up with the correct goal. So I'm going to go through and pull through some soil data on all my fields. And so as I do this, you can see the values changing over here on the right-hand side as it subtracts out the lab results. So at this point, what I've done is I've set a yield goal. I've selected soil samples in every single field. And what this is doing is you now come up with this weighted average for your combined goals. And so with that, if you have a field that's 400 acres and you got a nitrogen need of 95, that's going to be weighted more heavily than a field that's 150 acres and needs 86 pounds. And so with that, that's a weighted average at the bottom. You can make manual tweaks at any step in time. So in here you could say, well, this field, I know I didn't have nitrogen results, but there's probably some there. Let's just say there's 50 there. So I could key that in. Let's say, yeah, that's close. So let's just say there's some phosphorus there. So you can be tweaking at a field level, but a big part of this is you can also tweak your final combined yield goals. Or you should combine nutrient goals, I should say. So I could key in 115. I could make that an even 35. I could key in and say, regardless, I want at least 10 pounds of potassium, regardless of what's in the soil. So the weighted averages help you come up with the kind of, we're doing all the math for you, but always give you, I like to call it the agronomic paintbrush to go in and override those values. And then I mentioned before, so let's say as part of this, I also want to factor in sulfur. I don't have a coefficient for it, but I want to add that in. What that's doing for you is it's providing an additional row. So you now see sulfur. You don't have a goal because there's no coefficient for it, but you can see what was in the soil sample. You can key in values per field, or probably more commonly just coming in saying, I want 15 bushels of sulfur, regardless of the scenario. So with that, we'll click save. And then within here, we now have the view where we've got your goals. And so with this, on the right-hand side, what changed as part of this is you see your goals 115, 35, 10, 15. And they're also moved over into this goal view in the top right. So at this point, moving forward, we're trying to achieve those goals. So think of it as, again, a weighted average across all those fields. And then we're trying to come up with a blend that best appeases the needs of those fields. And then you can go apply that at the field level, buy it in bulk, apply it uniquely at the field level to meet the needs. So from here, we can now determine or input how we want to achieve the needed values in that field for the season. So with that, go ahead,
Ben, real quick. So we did have a question. I did answer it. Can we have those coefficient numbers specific to an agronomist or a location? Currently, they are not that way. They're specific to a crop. But that's definitely something that we'll document from a request perspective. The other one is if we're doing fall for 2025, the field is currently soybean, but planting corn next year. Should we be rolling over our year to 2026, or do they manage it? How do they manage the crop?
Sure. Yeah, I would say you create a 2026 season and create these blends in 2026, because that's really what you're after, is you're aiming for appeasing the needs of that corn crop in the upcoming year. And then you can just refer back to even the soil samples were collected in 2025. You can use those for a blend that's going to exist in 2026. And if that makes sense, and hopefully that addresses the question there.
I think so. Yep. Yes.
Okay. All right. And I also see being able to tweak the coefficients within that nutrient goal page too. So back to the comment about agronomist specific tweaks there, I would see that being a way to handle it as well. All right, good questions. Keep them coming. That's perfect. So with this, like I said, now we're going to jump in and we're going to start to work backwards and figure out how do we reach this goal. So I'm going to run through a couple scenarios. One is I'm going to use a mix that already has sets of products. I'm going to create one from scratch, and then I'm also going to do a multi-application scenario. So to start with here, I'm going to add a blend. And so from this, what I just call from scratch, that would be a blank application. In this case, I created a mix as the starting point for this webinar. So you can see I've got the soybean fall fert mix that I set up initially. So I can select this, and hopefully that kind of helps you visualize what happens. So when I choose that mix, it's just pulling through that set of products that I know I want to use for my fall applications. But because I didn't set rates now, we can now do that within this blending process. So think of it as just sets of products that maybe different clients have different preferences on the products they want to use based on the time of the year. And so with this, we can give this application different names. We can leave it as soybean fall fert. But a key component here. So the kind of the crux of what we're building here is we now know the analysis of each product. We know your needs. So as soon as you set an application, it comes up with your goals versus needs. Because I don't have any product rates, what's actually being delivered through your applications is nothing or blank. So the way we let you achieve that or do the calculations is hit this little calculator button. And so within here, this is where you do the blending. And so with that, we give you a table. And just to break this down a bit more, what we're looking at here is you have the columns representing nutrients, NPK, S, zinc, in my case. The rows representing products, anhydrous, MAP, potash, zinc sulfate. And then within these cells, these would be pounds of nutrient. So if I input anything in those boxes, that's how many pounds of zinc we need. And on the right, that's pounds of product to apply. And so the kind of the way to go about handling this is saying, I want to achieve, in my case, I need 15 pounds of sulfur. So I come into my sulfur box and type in 15, and then we calculate, okay, we got to apply zinc sulfate at 85 pounds an acre. For potassium, I need 10 pounds. And again, I'm visually looking over here. So I'm kind of using my needs versus what I need to apply. So I'm going 15, 10, 35 in this case. And then I can now more or less top this off. So if I look at and say my nitrogen needs are 115 pounds, and there's already 7 being delivered from the map, I know that in this case, let's see, I need 100, and let's call it 108. And so with that, I put in 108 and I hit save. So in that moment, what that does is it pulls through all the application rates for each product. And over here, you can see how close we got to matching the blend to the goals. So in this case, perfect match. Essentially, we've got some rounding that we do there. So with that, we've got a perfect match of this blend essentially. And with that, we can be done at that point, saying we save off this blend. What this does is a couple things. So now that we've created the blend, you've got the Ben webinar corn. In this case, we see that 1,600 acres. And so in this case, it's one blend across those 10 fields. We're going to bulk buy this. And so it's telling us the analysis of the blend. So it's a 115, 35, 10, 15, 30 blend. We're going to need 215 tons of that. The cost per acre, or sorry, the pounds per acre is 301 pounds per acre is the application rate. The cost per acre, $159. Total cost of the whole blend, $265. We do track bulk density. So at the product level, that's the reason we would enter the data in on that product level, is because we know how to calculate the bulk density across the products. And then as we expand this out, so by default that's collapsed. As we expand this out, we can also get to a product totals. So anhydrous, specifically how much of the rates and the totals of that. So within here, we now show you that, so the pricing totals. So within here, you can expand or just navigate around how big you want this to be. But with this, it's breaking down tons of product, the cost per ton, and the total cost of the whole blend. And as part of this, if you have input, change this to say, well, we just got a quote that this is a $1 a pound, you can update that. And then the whole blend recalculates to factor that change in. So quick adjustments here on the fly if needed. And so with that, created the blend. A part of this now too is the export. So if you need to report out the blend needs on this, we hit the export button. And that will generate a PDF in this case. There's some different options that we support in that view. So with this, the detail view, what you're looking at here, contains a very similar output where you can see the analysis value of the blend. You can see total acres, total cost there broken down. And then you also have the subtotals for the products and the bulk density. And then we're going to show you more of a clean table on total price and breakdown there. Additionally, we also have, as you look at the export options here, you can say, do you want a product total? Yes or no. So you could admit that. Do you want to include the products? Yes or no. Do you want to show pricing? Yes or no. So if we strip this down and re-export this, now this is functions more like a quote. And so in this sense, you could say I've got just your analysis, total rate, total tons, and it doesn't show a breakdown of what's in that analysis. It doesn't show the cost. And so if you want to just more simplify that to a quote, that's what we're looking at here. Okay, so that was, again, core scenario there around creating a blend from a mix. We're going to go through a couple more scenarios just so you get more familiar with the process. But in this scenario, I'm going to go from what I call from scratch in creating a blend. And so in that sense, we're not going to pull through the mix that has that soybean set of products that we commonly use. So in this case, we're going to say Ben from scratch blend. And so I also want to use this opportunity to talk through if you don't want to select fields. So in that moment, you could just say, maybe you're a retailer, you're a co-op, and you get a call saying we need 1,500 acres of let's just say, so in this case, 1,500 acres, and we need an analysis value of 150, actually, let's go 100, 40, 20, and then let's say he wants some sulfur. So we'll put sulfur in there, and they want 10 pounds of sulfur. So at this point, you notice that this screen is very much simplified. There's no fields at all. You're jumping straight into entering in an analysis value in this case and saying that's, oops, it said corn there, 100, 40, 20, and sulfur being 10. And then you can set a yield goal if you want that, but in my case, not required. So I'm just going to prove that point of saying I can just save this out. And what this says now is I don't know anything about fields, just an acreage and analysis value. And then again, I don't have mixes, so I'm going to go just from blank. I know what products to include. Let's get fall applied on corn. So in this case, let's say I know I want urea. So real time, I can just start searching for my products. And so I say urea, MAP, potash, and AMS. So with that, you get to the final result that we had before, but in that case, I had to manually pull through each product into the application. So again, that's kind of just illustrating the value back to if you want to set up a mix and you know that these are a set of products you commonly use, you can pull that through as a mix to save yourself time of that selection process. All right, so now we're going to do the blending itself. So over here, we've got a goal we're trying to reach. We've got the totals. So we've got our needs. And so as part of this, I'm going to visually look at the goal side and say, I know I need 10 pounds of sulfur. I know I need 20 pounds of K. I know I need 40 pounds of P. And then we can do the math here. So a couple things. So in my case, I've already got 46 pounds of N being delivered from the urea. And it's already getting me to 63 pounds total. I want to get to 100. So I need 30 pounds in addition. So a couple ways you can do that is you can add 30 onto this. So say that's 76 and see that Ben's bad at math. Or you can clear this out is kind of what I like to do and say, okay, now if I didn't have any urea, I could say there's 17 pounds. And then you can see to get to 100, that's where you need, let me delete that out. So you need 83 pounds of that. So with that, hit save, and you can visually see again that we've appeased the needs of that field based on the goal. And then we save it out, and we've got that blend from scratch. So it's telling us we've achieved that 140, 20, 10 blend, and we need 249 tons of it. So again, very similar scenario. The differences there is I didn't select crops, or sorry, I didn't select fields, and I didn't select from a mix. I just selected individual products. Third, final scenario is we do support multi-application. So with this, I'm going to, for a third time, create a blend. And with this, we're going to say webinar multi-app. So within here, for simplicity, again, we'll just go acreage and analysis value. So again, I just know I want to achieve 250, 125, 45, and let's put some zinc in this one. So I'll save that out. What I'm going to do at this point is the biggest difference on this flow is I'm going to choose 2 applications. And what I want to talk through here is I want to say I'm going to do, say, a dry starter, or I've got my dry and liquid starters here. So I could choose, you could preview and say, I want to put on a liquid. Kind of comes down to, does the equipment support liquid, or do I want to go dry starter and furrow? So I'll do that in this case. So I'll select that. And with that, I had that as a mix. So it's this combination of products and rates that I pull through. But I could say, well, I know I want to get, I can put 25 pounds down a map through my equipment. And I know I can go up to 4 pounds without burning the crop for zinc. So we do that, and then we can add a second application. So you're going to say, I know in the fall, I need to make up the difference across all of that with my corn fall apply. And so with that, I could choose that product. Actually, I'm going to go with this one. And so now we've got, if we collapse this down, we see we've got the corn starter and the corn fall. And the corn starter is already being accounted for in the total needs. And then in here, I can now hit my calculator, and I can see if I look at the say my needs, I could say, well, I know I still need 8.6 pounds of sulfur, or sorry, that was zinc. So we don't have any zinc in here. So I still need, no, sulfur's covered, so I'm going to go 45 pounds of potassium, 112 pounds of phosphorus, and then with that remaining, I've got 23 pounds. And so one thing too is, if you think about needing to do the math, is that you can poke around and say, I know this is ballpark 220, and say, oh, I'm still short a few pounds, bump this up until you get to 247. So it's a pretty quick calculation if you're just changing these numbers, hitting enter, and they're real-time calculating. Now I hit save, and I can see that I achieved that rate. I'm still a little low. I don't have quite enough zinc. And so you could come back into this corn blend and try to crank that rate up. But if you are limited in how that can be applied, or the crop limitations, you might not be able to reach that goal. But with that, the major part there is multi-application. And it calls out here, this mix I pulled through had potash, but you can see I don't need it in this case. So I can actually remove, oh, sorry, it's the AMS. AMS I don't need because I don't have any sulfur requirements for it. So I can remove sulfur from that blend altogether. I save that blend, and now again, same output. The difference here is we are going to call out the cost for each of these. So you're saying you've got that starter blend, 15 tons of the starter blend with an analysis of 2.8, 13, 1, 2. And I've got 388 tons of the 248, 112, 45 blend. With that, density is broken out. You can always expand to see the details. And then on the bottom right, prog totals. So again, calling out, in this case, the total is the true total across both applications, stating how many, and if you had, let's say, yeah, in this case, I had map in both applications. And so this is the summation of the total map I need, and total cost. With that, as you export it out, we're still going to give you an individual breakdown. So I'll include products, and then I want totals last. So just showing you what that multi-application PDF looks like. And so in this case, it's a multi-application. So you got the corn starter, the fall fert, and then it's breaking down total cost. And then it's going to break down densities for each application. And then the prog total is cleanly broken out down here as well. With that, a couple additional things. We'll wrap up with some questions here shortly, but a couple additional features. One is you can multi-select applications or blends and say, okay, well, we created a soybean blend for Munson Farms, a corn blend, and a wheat blend. Well, they want to know total cost of all that. So that's what we allow you to do here is a multi-select across all those blends, all the crops, and then export. And in this case, we'll just, for showing the difference here, I can show what I'd call like the total. So across all the blends, all the products, all the crops, we're going to do the math for you to generate all the totals. Still downloading here. Let's get that. We'll go last. Let that think on it. So we'll do the math across all the blends, all the products, and give you the totals across that. And again, you can choose if you want price on that, don't want price. But in this case, here's that first blend. Let's say these are my cornfields. Second blend is all my soybeans. Third blend, let's say that's wheat. And this is what I want to call it here is this table is going to say across all those blends, here's total product needed. And optionally, you could remove that from the PDF. You could remove pricing if you wanted and just handle it from an agronomic standpoint. So from there, that's the core functionality around the nutrient blender. A couple kind of closing statements is, part of that blending tool is that, call it quick blender, if you will. So within a crop plan, within a recommendation, we now surface up the calculator button. So what I'm going to do here is now I'm in our crop planner and I'm looking at a particular field with a yield goal. I'm looking at say a fall fertility application. And within here, actually, let me find a field with this one. So within this scenario, I can edit and just calling out that we threw this calculator button anywhere that you want to interact with fertility products. So within a crop plan, if you want to blend and say, well, I know I want to hit 20, 70, 34, and something over here, you can save. And so that calculator button is just universally valuable throughout the product. And then with that, just kind of rounding that out too, is if you write a recommendation and say, I'm going to write a rec for just one field, I'm going to choose my corn fall fertility. Within the recommendation view, it's there as well. So clicking on that, I can now say, yep, I'm going to get to a 20, 10, 10. Let's just say 100. So now you got a 120, 10, 10, 20 blend made up within here, and then you save that out, and then you got all the functionality that existing functionality around prog totals, generating PDFs. And so with that, it's more of using that quick blender opposed to doing it through the blend tab and factoring in the needs, subtracting yield goals, it's multiplying by yield goals, subtracting lab results. So just an alternate way there to use that quick blender calculator to help you do the math. So with that, I know it's probably a lot of functionality, but again, this is recorded, so we'd love it if you went back through and followed along. We're constantly iterating on the product, so if you have feedback along with this function, with this feature, we'd love to hear it, still adding to it. So with that, we're leaving plenty of time for questions here at the end, and I'll let Galia read through the questions, and we can work through it. With that being said, I will show, actually, I'm going to throw this up and show our support contact information. So just to round this out, phone number, email, website, if you want to reach us. Love feedback, like I mentioned, so please use it. Please provide feedback, and we'd love to get you set up with a trial, with an account, or add this on. So with that said, appreciate the time, and we'll go to questions at this time.
Yep. Right now we only have one more, so please feel free to put any questions you have in the chat. The one that's out there actually references the formula-based RX that you demonstrated last week, and they want to know if it's possible to use the values that were created using those formulas in the blending instead of the coefficients.
Gotcha. Right now, no. It'd be great to grab the individual's name and we'll follow up. Right now, it's not. So those two kind of functions are independent of each other, of like the equation-based system and the blends. We do foresee or would love to see kind of making this more cohesive across the two functions in crop planning. But yeah, today they are not. I appreciate the time today. Like we said, webinars are going to continue going forward. Would love feedback on this. So reach out, that slide I have with our contact information or me directly. And we'd love to engage in some conversations around nutrient blending. So with that, I appreciate the time and we will see you in a couple weeks.